A warm welcome to everyone joining us from all over the world. We are here at a beautiful Red Bull Ring in Spielberg, Austria for race 2 of the GT Cup Series. It's the sprint race once again after the beautiful first race. This morning we are here back for more. As you can see behind me, the cars are ready to start race number 2, and in pole position it's Rudolf Benio with his BMW M4, a car that has taken the circuit by storm this weekend, taking home the win in race 1 with another outfit that is starting today in P3. Behind them, actually between them, the Pagani Zonda, another incredible car. We have so many entries this weekend, more than 25 cars here on the starting grid. We have GT3 cars, we have GT4 cars. Of course, let's not forget the GTX category as well, with the KTM Crossbows starting this race from 4th and 5th on the grid, and of course the GT4 category as well, together with the GT Cup cars with Porsche and Lamborghini Super Trofeos ready to take this circuit on for what is the final race for the championship in this opening round of the season here at the Red Bull Ring. It started to rain a couple of minutes ago. Now the track is dry. It's not raining anymore. It seems to be quite cloudy, quite windy, and quite cold, but the drivers are ready to heat it up here at the Red Bull Ring for race 2 of the GT Cup Series. And here we are on the racetrack here at the beautiful Red Bull Ring in Spielberg for race 2 of the GT Cup Series, the sprint series that has come here for the opening round of the 2025 season. The 4.3 kilometer racetrack with 10 corners, 7 to the right, 3 to the left, hosting what is going to be for sure a fantastic race. And here we are on board with one of the cars this weekend. It is KTM with its Crossbow GT2. It's number 26. Of course, the one driven by Jaroslav Honzik. Together with Viktor Mraz, they have shed the wheel of the car during the endurance race that happened on Saturday, and now, of course, during the 2 sprint races on Sunday. The two have split the car throughout the 2 races. In this weekend, for sure, we have, for sure, many cars, of course, Viktor Mraz being at the wheel. Whereas this, we have one of the BMWs here are in racetrack. It's, for sure, car number 500, the one driven by Max Hesse, the one of Racing Trevor, starting today in 10th position. As you can see now, the drivers are lining up behind the safety car, which will then peel back into the pits at the end of this lap. And then we will be able to get the show going for the last 25 minutes of racing in the opening weekend of the GT Cup Series Championship in 2025. Rudolf Benio starts on pole position on the right-hand side of the track. On the left-hand side, it's Antonin Herbeck. We saw, again, Viktor Mraz briefly behind the wheel of car number 26. As here we go with the BMW of Benio and the Pagani of Antonin Herbeck in first and second position respectively. And as the lights will turn off, we will be going racing here at the Red Bull Ring. It's lights out, away we go, and it's a brilliant start by Antonin Herbeck, who takes home first place immediately right after the lights went out. He's a bit deep though into turn 1 and seems to have an issue now with the car, which seems to have turned off possibly, as he's crawling to a halt right after the opening corner. Drama for Antonin Herbeck, who drops to the back of the grid, and this has promoted one of the BMWs back into the lead of the race, and that is Timo Schreibner with car A06, whereas the spin now for one of the GTX cars. It's the one driven by Max Grip, who was in 8th position, car number A98, who has spun at the exit of turn 3, and he has now rejoined the track right behind the Pagani of Antonin Herbeck, who has managed to make it back onto the track. So also briefly car number 26, Viktor Mraz, clipping the gravel on the exit of turn number 4. So it's a very eventful opening lap of the race, with Timo Schreibner now in the lead in front of one of the Lamborghini from 78 Racing Team, that is Alexander Ober in the number 78, whereas Christian Wimberger in the number 63 is slightly behind, but still in top 5. And here you can see the entire field, as we briefly saw. I think it was Antonin Herbeck again spinning at the exit of turn number 7. Here he is. Unfortunately, seems to be a bigger issue for the Pagani driver, who's now trying to get back onto the racing line, as race control communicates that the start procedure is under investigation. And now we go back on board with car number 26 as it tries to navigate the traffic as well. It has a couple of GT4 cars in front, as well as a cup car. That is Viktor Mraz trying to make his way through Bob Bao in the Trenka Racing Porsche Cup car, together with one of the other participants in the GT4 category, the Lotus that we're seeing now, and the Aston Martin as well, the one from Yannick Motorsport, fighting for that spot at the top of the GT4 standings. Here we see the entire group of cars coming towards turn number 4. It's a very complicated part of the race with so much traffic. It's very difficult to judge correctly what is happening, but so far so good for Timo Scheibner, as the number 806 car has now jumped up to the lead of the race. Of course, let's not forget they are the winners of race number 1. And Scheibner now taking over the wheel from his teammate for race number 2. He's doing whatever he can everything in his power to try and get first place. And talk about power, just look at how quick the KTM Crossbow is on the straights, but just struggling a bit in the corners, especially in trying to overtake the GT4 cars. That is Victor Mraz trying to crawl back towards the top end of the field, fighting against Alexander Kozahov and Filip Nedoma. And of course the Lotus Emira of Pavel Savicka as well. As here you can see the Emira going slightly wide, and now the Aston Martin gaining back some time. As here we have car number 814, and that is, surprisingly, into the pit lane, and that is Rupert Atzberger, the winner of the endurance race yesterday, who seems to have a big issue here. He was in 7th at the end of the opening lap, but unfortunately he had to crawl back into the pit lane. It's not been an easy start for some of the KTM cars. We saw earlier Marius Eigner finish his run into turn 1 with a spin. So that is definitely not a good omen for KTM, and you can see that they're trying to look at something on both the engine bay and the suspensions. Rear engine, of course, this KTM, but the team looks kind of preoccupied, so I'm guessing that this could be race over for now for Rupert Atzberger, or if not over, this is going to be very difficult for them to come back and start gaining some more time. As here you can see just how difficult things have been so far for them, with now Timo Scheibner in front. As you can see with the split screen, we were looking at the KTM in the pits, but now it's back to the leaders because Jack Russell in the GTX category is also pressuring Timo Scheibner for the race lead. These are the two cars that did the best job in the opening race of the day. In fact, GT Cup Series opened up the entire program on Sunday with race number 1 in the sprint format, and now they're doing the same in race number 2. And unfortunately you can see car number A14 by Robert Atzberger being brought back to the pit lane, which is such a shame, especially this early on. All good for Timo Scheibner on the other hand. He's still rocking his BMW strong in P1 with Jack Russell right behind him, however, and we know how quick the KTM could be on the straight, so let's see if he can make up a move on the BMW, though it seems to be difficult for Jack Russell now to move in front of Timo Scheibner, and so no changes in position so far, though. Now he's trying to distract his rival with him flashing the lights to Timo Scheibner, and so we see both of them once again run towards turn number 4. This time Scheibner is quite closer, whereas so far we have a penalty for Rudolf Benio, the one who was starting on pole position, and we saw him at the start being quite far back, and because of that he got a drive-through penalty for an incorrect starting position, and therefore it's a nightmare start for Rudolf Benio. Not only did he lose his pole position and lost second place as well, dropping to 3rd, but he's also going to have to take a drive-through penalty, which would likely see him lose the GT3 lead, as Max Hesse is in 2nd position and he's 7th overall, and he's not that far behind. And speaking of GT3s, unfortunately Piotr Vira in the Goodspeed Racing Team Mercedes is in the pits. Doesn't look to be a quick pit stop either. Seems to have an issue to the car, so that is definitely not what he needed and what the team needed in order to take a good result today. Unfortunately, I think that's race over for the Mercedes, who's likely going to get brought back to the garage now, as we saw with the little carts behind and underneath the car. And here we are back on the fight for the lead. Timo Scheibner and Jack Russell, one against the other. As we also have another fight, this time seeing a KTM crossbow getting the better of one of the Lamborghinis, and right behind him it's car number 26 of Victor Mraz, who's also in a fight, this time with Marius Eigner. We saw the Lamborghini of Coach McKenzie being overtaken by Max Grip at the start of the lap, and now car number 802, the green Lamborghini, has been chased by Victor Mraz and Marius Eigner, and we're now on board with Victor Mraz. You can see how it's difficult to brake with this car, trail braking up until the apex and then going full throttle at the exit. Car braking over 6,000 RPM before shifting up. You can see the lovely purple KTM. And we could hear the roar of KTM's engine, which is definitely among the most powerful ones here at the Red Bull Ring. We saw how good the straight line speed of the KTM really is, and we can see that right now as well with a direct comparison to the Lamborghini, which is one of the quickest GT3 cars on a straight line. And in fact, Lamborghini is able to stay in front, but maybe, just maybe, Marius Eigner waiting for the moment to pounce, and that is exactly what happened, overtaking the Lamborghini at the braking zone. And here you can see the box of Karen Racing, the team of Victor Mraz, who's now right behind Marius Eigner. Let's see if we can make a move up the inside. No, it's quite late, especially here into turn 3. You need to be alongside your rival if you want to have a chance at the apex. Otherwise, it is just best to wait and perhaps do something here into turn 4, but Mraz doesn't look close enough to the back of Marius Eigner to make any sort of overtake. We're approaching now the halfway mark of this race. Jack Russell has recently moved to the lead. Unfortunately, we couldn't see that, but he's now into first place. And speaking about change of positions, here we have Alexander Kozohov overtaking Petr Kukola for third place in the GT4 standings. Just like race 1, it's Buggy Raziem Racing in front of the Lotus Emira of Blue Garage Racing, but the fight for third is still very much alive, with Aston Martin being very close to the back of the Porsche Cayman. And that is why we're sticking with them with the drone cam, as they now come towards the final 2 corners. And here we are with Jack Russell, who has overtaken Timo Scheibner for the lead of the race. And so it's KTM once again in front of everyone. Let's not forget that, of course, they are from 2 different categories, though. Jack Russell part of the GTX class, whereas the BMW is part of the 6+8 category. And here we are with Timo Scheibner almost going around the outside of Jack Russell, though he wasn't able to do so. And here we are back with Scheibner, who is now trying desperately to go at the Austrian. Russell now has to defend towards turn 4. He doesn't, though, so he leaves the door open for the BMW to dive up the inside, but it's a very good braking zone from Jack Russell. Perfect on the brakes. And under braking, he's able to keep the position from the attacks of Timo Scheibner. As behind them, it's Christian Wimberger with the bright orange Lamborghini from 78 Racing Team by VMAX. pulls up into third, and here we are with the leaders of the GT4 class as well. Bugatti ASM Racing and their Mercedes AMG GT4 staying at the top of the GT4 class, with Lotus right behind them. Of course, the Lotus Emira being one of the cooler cars on the track for sure, and definitely one of the most competitive as well, given that they've finished in second place, race number 1 in the GT4 standings, and they're now still in second position here in race 2 with just 11 minutes left on the clock. Here we go, we see Jack Russell almost tagged by Timo Scheibner in the braking zone, but he was able to slow the car down. The driver was now in second position. Of course, for Scheibner now, the opportunity to try and make a move up the inside into turn 4, just like he tried to last time out, and there's contact between the two of them. Scheibner barges his way through and gets the place. That was a late lunge from the BMW, but he looked to be almost alongside the KTM, though he definitely went in a little too late as Scheibner tried the move up the inside. Russell was already starting to take the corner, but the result is that Jack Russell has now dropped to second position, and Timo Scheibner is now up into first place with just 10 minutes left in the second race of the GT Cup Series 2025. Across the line goes Timo Scheibner with the number 806 car, able to keep first place. We'll see what Race Direction will have to say following that incident. And they're coming up on one of the lapped cars, and that is Team Gabor in the Lotus Exige V6 Cup. Another very, very interesting piece of machinery, isn't it? Especially as it is trying to fight for the top 5 in the GTX standings. So far, unfortunately failing to do so, but they're still in 6th position. The GTX standings, of course, led by Jack Russell, with Christian Wimberger in 2nd position, and Max Grip in 3rd place with the other KTM crossbow of MZR Motorsport Centrum Reed. The team was also fielding Jack Russell, Marius Eigner in the number 119, and that won the endurance race with Robert Atzberger in the number 814. But unfortunately, he had to retire from this race early on due to an issue to the suspension or the engine. That was what the mechanics were looking at once the car went back to the pits. Across the line goes Timo Scheibner right now to start off yet another lap with 8 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock. He is now 1.7 seconds clear of Jack Russell. He also posted the fastest first sector of the race the previous lap, though Russell was able to gain a couple of tenths over him. And here we are in the pits with a team that is now in second position with Jack Russell, who will be trying to get back at Timo Scheibner after that risky overtake for the BMW car that, of course, has been very competitive on the GT3 scene so far. But so far, it has also managed to shine here in GT Cup Series after taking the win in race 1, also with car number 806. Timo Scheibner is masterfully driving now after his risky overtake. However, we've now heard from race control, and we can see it now from the graphics, that Scheibner has received a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision. That is evidently regarding the incident with Jack Russell a couple of laps ago. And so Scheibner has to pull 5 seconds on the Austrian. The gap now is 2.2. He clocked a 1 minute 28.5, Scheibner, which is the fastest lap of the race so far. And it was 5/10 quicker than his rival the previous lap, which makes it possible for him to build this gap, though he really has to concentrate now, and especially with lapped cars here and there, he needs to make everything work. However, Jack Russell does seem to be very competitive at this moment in time, with Jack Russell now definitely in between the best drivers of this weekend, claiming second position, of course, in race 1, and now fighting for the win in the final race of the opening round of the season. Here we are also with the GT4 fight for the lead. These two cars have been separated by just a couple of tenths since this morning, haven't they? Boogie Raziem Racing and Blue Garage Racing finished less than 3 tenths apart in race number 1 in this particular order, and now Pavel Savicka is once again trying to overtake Martin Hudek for the lead of the GT4 standings, but the Boogie Raziem driver just looks so solid out there. Perfect lines throughout the entire lap, and he just seems so much at ease with a car that has really been fantastic throughout its existence. Of course, the GT4 class being not as competitive as GT3, but having their moments to shine, such as, for example, in endurance series like the 24-hour series by Creventic, where Boogie Raziem Racing has taken numerous wins, also in the GT4 standings with this car, which makes it even better for them to come here and be straight away among the favorites to win the class title at the end of the season. Car number 29 has been perfect so far in the sprint races. Unfortunately for Bugira, however, the endurance race didn't go according to plan, and both cars had to retire early on. As now we can see the Lotus of Blue Garage finally getting the slipstream and getting closer to the Mercedes. They are right behind Denis Vajek, who we just saw overtaking them in the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo, whereas they're now getting closer to the Porsche 997 Cup of Kugelbauer Motorsport and Richard Voschitz, a driver who has struggled this weekend, not gonna lie, but he has been very good in race number 2, holding his own, and most importantly, keeping second position in the GTC 1 category, which is reserved to the Porsche Cup cars. He's in the older Porsche 997 compared to the 991.2 that is driven by Trenka Racing, and most importantly, Bob Bao, who is now in 13th position overall, and of course leader of the standings in his class. But let's have a look now at the gap between Scheibner and Jack Russell. It is 4 seconds. Remember, Scheibner has a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision, especially exactly with Jack Russell when he tried to make the move stick, and he did, though not without some contact, which then was resulting in a 5-second time penalty for Timo Scheibner. Let's see now how Scheibner is going to take on the final 2 laps of the race, that is, given that he still has this lap and the next one to go once he crosses the start-finish line. He's still pumping in the lap times though, isn't he? Once again, fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 28.3, gaining 7 tenths over Jack Russell. The gap now 4.7, and now you're starting to feel as though he could make it, and he could keep first place despite that penalty, which would be incredible from them. Remember that he and his teammate have won the opening sprint race of the season just this morning. Now approaching turn number 5, which is flat out, of course, before turn number 6 and 7, the two left-handers, which are very, very close to one another. One of the very few left-handers in the entire track. But naturally, the BMW handling them flawlessly as it now approaches the final corner for the penultimate time before starting the last lap of the race. Russell has lost quite some time throughout this lap as well, so I'm guessing that the gap could be over 5 seconds once he crosses the line once again. We saw Victor Mraz's onboard as Timo Scheibner went through, and the gap is 5.7 seconds now between Timo Scheibner and Jack Russell. So despite the penalty, it looks as though Scheibner could get the win. He now exits turn number 3. Remember, this is the last lap of the race. You can see both BMWs going towards turn number 4. As we unfortunately see one of the cars, and I think that is Richard Voschitz once again, and that would be the 3rd time in as many races that he's bitched the car outside of turn 4. That would be a real shame, especially given that it was the last lap of the race. But there's no time to think about that for Timo Scheibner as he now approaches the final couple of corners. Let's see what the gap is. He has gained 3/10 in the first sector, lost 7 in a second, so it's going to be very close, though the final sector of the race has always smiled to Timo Scheibner, who now has a bit of traffic as well, but he should be able to make it as he rounds out the final corner now. Timo Scheibner about to cross the start-finish line to take the checker flag and ideally take the win, but let's see the gap between the two of them. It is 6 seconds at the finish line, and so it is Timo Scheibner who wins race number 2 of the GT Cup Series. It's back-to-back wins for car number 806 and HR Spezialfeldern as they're able to take home victory in race 2 as well after taking home the win with Jürgen Alsen in race number 1. Timo Scheibner did the job in race number 2, just like his German teammate. Jack Russell finishes 2nd for the 2nd race in a row. 2-time runner-up in this first weekend of the season. It's still a great result for him, and it is a fantastic one for Christian Wimberger, who is able to finish on the podium in the overall standings and in 2nd place in the GTX class right behind Jack Russell as he finishes 3rd. Thomas Westerp is 4th, and Rudolf Benio, despite the penalty, is able to finish in 5th position in the overall standings and most importantly at the lead of the GT3 category. So he is one of the other winners. We also have the GT Cup cars ready to cross the finish line, and it's Bob Bao who takes the win. And in GT4, once again, Bugger ZM Racing with Martin Hudek and car number 29 are our winners, just in front of the Lotus Emira of Blue Garage Racing. And then in 3rd place, it's Yannick Motorsport with Aston Martin, Petr Kukola behind the wheel of that car. And here we are with Victor Mraz, who finished at the end of the day in 9th place in the overall standings and in 4th position in the GTX category. But here are the highlights of race number 2 of the GT Cup Series, with car number 806 and Timo Scheibner able to take home the victory here in the final race of the opening round of the season. What an incredible time we've had here at the Red Bull Ring. These are the final results for GT Cup Series in the second race of the season. Timo Scheibner takes home victory ahead of Jack Russell and Christian Wimberger, with Thomas Verstappen and Rudolf Benio in P4 and P5 respectively. And that is all for the GT Cup Series here from the Red Bull Ring. Thanks for being with us, and see you guys next time.